Welcome to my Catalina Island scuba diving adventure. Stay tuned until the end to see the giant I dove with. Our day started on a crisp early morning. With excitement in the air, we boarded a ferry from the mainland to Avalon. For those who haven't made this trip, it's an easy hour on a high speed ferry where you can see the island slowly coming into view, framed by open ocean on all sides. Along the ferry ride, we were greeted by a pod of dolphins to help lead our way. Avalon, with its charming little harbor and brightly colored buildings, is something straight out of a postcard. After we docked, we set out to Casino Point to meet with our dive guide. This was my first dive since getting certified, and despite all the preparation, my heart was pounding. As we hit the water, we were greeted by Catalina's surprisingly clear visibility and a chilly drop in temperature. A tip here for anyone trying this: California diving is typically cold water diving, and a wetsuit layer or two is almost mandatory. Descending underwater, it's like entering a whole new world, especially with all the kelp rising from the seafloor. My first challenge was clearing my ears, which turned out to be trickier than expected because of my narrow ear canal, but with some patience, I got through it and continued on. As I went deeper, I got my first look at the marine life that makes Catalina such a diver's paradise. I was fascinated by all the kelp surrounding me. Kelp is the fastest growing plant in the ocean and can grow up to 2 feet per day under ideal conditions. In a little over a year, giant kelp can grow to be more than 100 feet long. These bright orange Garibaldi were common during our dive and are actually California's state fish. Around this time, I was starting to get more comfortable with the entire experience. The initial nerves had faded, and I began to really settle into the rhythm of the dive, which allowed me to relax, let go, and just take in everything around me. I think there's something almost meditative about diving. It's a kind of peacefulness you rarely find anywhere else. The slow, steady rhythm of my breathing, the sensation of weightlessness, and the silence of the underwater world combined to create this incredible calm. Everywhere I looked, the colors and textures were shifting and changing with the light, creating a mesmerizing, dreamlike effect that was almost hypnotic. One of the big attractions we encountered was a sunken glass bottom boat. There's something pretty surreal about coming across this structure, just lying there underwater. It feels both out of place, like it doesn't belong, and yet somehow it fits perfectly into its surroundings here, taken over by the marine life. The wreck is a prime spot for all kinds of creatures. White sea bass darted in and out of the open windows, adding flashes of color, and I noticed spiny lobsters tucked securely into rocky crevices around the boat. Every new angle gave a slightly different view as the boat slowly came to life with all the activity around it. I found myself stopping often, just taking it all in, appreciating how the sea had made this wreck its own. At one point, our dive guide gestured to a moray eel nestled between two rocks, its mouth slightly open, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. They look intimidating at first glance, but as long as they're left alone, they're actually pretty harmless. And then, just as we were exploring along a rocky ridge, we caught sight of the star of the show, a massive giant sea bass. These gentle giants are some of the ocean's oldest residents, and they can grow over 7.5 feet long, sometimes weighing up to 560 pounds. Seeing one in person was absolutely awe-inspiring. It's rare to come across a creature so large yet so graceful. Despite their size, they move through the water almost effortlessly, with slow, sweeping movements that seem to command the ocean around them. One of the best decisions we made for this dive was hiring a local guide who knows the Casino Point Dive Park like the back of their hand. If you're diving a new site, especially one with unique ecosystems like Catalina's kelp forests and wrecks, having a local expert with you makes a huge difference. Our guide not only set us up with all the right equipment, like a thick 7 mm wetsuit to handle the colder water, but also briefed us on key areas to explore, local conditions, and any potential hazards. It was a huge comfort knowing we had someone who could customize the dive to our experience level, and it allowed us to relax and fully enjoy the underwater scenery without worry. From pointing out hidden moray eels to identifying plant and fish species, the guide transformed the dive into a far richer and more educational experience. If you're ever diving in an unfamiliar location, I'd highly recommend going with a local pro. It brings peace of mind and lets you focus on what you're really there for, soaking in the underwater world around you. Eventually, it was time to ascend, and I'll admit, part of me wasn't ready to leave. There's just so much to see beneath the waves, and every dive feels like barely scratching the surface of what's out there. Sitting there, watching the island fade in the distance, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the experience. Diving off Catalina Island wasn't just a chance to test out my certification, it was a reminder of how much beauty lies beneath the surface, waiting for those who venture out of their comfort zones. Thanks for joining me on this adventure. If you're interested in more of my adventures content, or if you have questions about the dive spots around Catalina or scuba tips, drop them in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring.